When it comes to the supernatural or paranormal, one does not have to believe in it to have it come up out of the darkness and into the light, showing its ugly face. These are the times when it did just that. Back in the summer of 1975, it was a warm day, and the neighborhood was full of life, especially in the park, where the sounds of laughter and the bounce of basketballs could be heard throughout the park. I was 12 years old at the time, and I loved being outdoors with all my family and friends. What started out as being a day of fun would quickly take a dark turn for my mother and my grandmother. But before I go any further, please don't forget to smash the hell out of the like button. Also, click on the little bell icon so that you can stay in the loop and be notified each and every time I drop a brand new video. At around 2 p.m. or so, I had decided to take a break from playing basketball to go and pay my granny a visit so that I could perhaps get a quick bite to eat and something cold to drink. After arriving at my grandparents' house, I knocked on their door for a couple of minutes, but no one came to the door. Then I heard the sound of my granny's voice coming from across the street where she was visiting with one of her friends, telling me to come across the street to where she was. So I made my way over to see her. I'd only been there for a few minutes when out of nowhere, my granny stood up and motioned to her friend, asking her, did she see it? Not knowing what my granny was talking about, her friend replied back to her, saying to her, did I see what? At that moment, my granny replied back by saying, do you see that person go into my house? Chills shot up and down my spine as I was facing her house at the time, and I never saw anyone enter into it. A few minutes later, my mother showed up at my granny's house, and I ran across the street to greet my mother. The first thing I said to her was Granny had claimed to have seen a person enter into her house, but never saw them come back out. Not knowing how to fully process this, my mother told me to stay back as she calmly opened the door to my granny's house and went inside to try and see if she could find anyone. A couple of minutes later, my mother came back outside with a look on her face that I'd never seen before. So I asked my mother what was wrong. The answer that she gave me took me by complete surprise. She told me that she didn't find anyone inside the house, but she was immediately overwhelmed by the strong smell of roses as soon as she entered into the house. Not knowing what she meant by this, I asked her, what does that mean? Mama looked back at me and told me that she had always been told that the sweet smell of flowers, especially roses, where there were no flowers around, often represented that someone that either was or about to die. Hearing this scared me to death, so much so that I refused to go inside and smell for myself. Minutes later, my granny made her way back across the street to see what was going on. After Granny went into her house, I overheard her and Mama talking about the strong smell of roses. Then I would hear my granny's phone ring, quickly followed up by the sounds of screaming and crying from both Granny and my mother. Not knowing what to make of this, I quickly overcame my fear of entering the house and burst through the door to check up on my granny and my mother. Once inside, I too could smell the strong aroma of flowers. Then came the devastating news. The phone call that my granny had received was from one of her relatives who lived in Mayfield, Kentucky, informing my granny that a close relative of ours had been in a tragic automobile accident earlier, in which he had been thrown through the window of his vehicle and landed straight into a large tree with a branch sticking out of it. The force of that accident left my cousin impaled in the branch, nearly decapitating him and killing him instantly. After hearing this horrific news, it all started to make sense to me. What Granny had seen enter her house, more than likely, was the ghost of my cousin David, and the strong smell of the roses was an indication to all of us that he had died and had moved on. Over the course of the rest of my life, I never experienced anything like that again. But what it did do was make me a firm believer in the afterlife, prompting me to want to share the stories that I take pleasure in sharing with you all today. That's all for now, folks. I hope you enjoyed the story. Be on the lookout for more stories and tales from the hoods to come. And like always, I'm Sir Creepsta. And until next time, stay terrified.